Welcome to the replay, and hello everyone. As you can see, I have an extra handy dandy assistant tonight. So we're super excited to say hello everyone. Uh-oh. Dropped their toy. You gonna say hi? Hi! Alright, I'm gonna hand this handy dandy assistant off to this handy dandy assistant.
Big boy.
Because we're going to talk about some tea tonight, and we're going to brew some water, and we don't want little tiny hands right there by the water, hot water. So, alrighty then. I want to say welcome, and for those of you that are joining us for the first time, welcome especially to the tea family, to you. And we also wanted to say, if you have any questions or comments, or you want to share what you're drinking for your tea, what blended tea you're drinking today, please put it in the comments. All right. You just need to refresh. It's on. All righty then. So today, our focus is on doing a lot of questions and answers that you have submitted over the last week or so. Some of you gave me some questions right after the live last time. Some have sent some in during the week, and we are going to try to get to all of them today. So first, I'm going to start brewing the water. All right. Today, I'm going to be drinking Starlight Pear, which is one of our green teas. This one is only available January, February, March, and April. So we're in 2 months in. It has pear, apple, and a blend of green teas in there. So that is what I'm going to be drinking today. I am going to talk just for a minute or two about something really special that's going to be happening this week. So I'm just giving everybody a chance to get there and say hello. And I see that I've got a couple people that are watching and joining us. But I always want to give everybody an extra couple of minutes because technology. So yes, I am going to be making it. I'm going to be using one of my teacups. This one is one of my May teacups. And so we're going to get everything prepped. There's our basket. All right, and then, so this one, what I found is a friend of mine suggested it, and then we tried it and we liked it better too, is I've got my handy dandy teaspoon. I'm going to put that in there. We want to make sure that we are going to brew this for 2 minutes to just give the pear and the apple that have been freeze-dried touch more time, just a touch more time. They're very delicate fruits. They're not overpowering. So what ends up happening is we want to make sure that we have plenty of time to hydrate. The green tea only takes a minute, but it's okay if you brew green tea for 2 minutes the first time out. Don't be afraid to do that. You can add a minute or add 30 seconds or something like that to it if you want. That is perfectly acceptable. I know some people like to make teas stronger and some people like to make teas a little weaker. It's all in how you want to enjoy your tea. I'm doing a teacup full, so this is an actual 6 to 7 ounce teacup. I have my big basket just because the smaller one is being washed because it gets used regularly in my house. And then we'll just wait for this to boil up and we'll make sparkling pear. So again, have any questions? As you hear my primary handy dandy helper in the background making the happy boy noises. So if you have any questions or you just want to say hello, please say hello. I'm going to look down. Sometimes I have notes down here so I don't forget anything. And then I kind of keep an eye on the computer on the chat questions, especially since I've got 2 assistants over there, and I think the little one is going to distract the big one for the most part during our live session tonight. So that being said, one of the biggest questions that we had to do with oolong versus black tea, and then caffeine again. And one of the funny things is, like, we did talk about that not too long ago. We're going to talk about it a little bit again tonight. Sounds like my water is almost done. Remember, if you ever don't have one of these electric kettles, it's okay if you can watch your water when it just starts to simmer, and the water just starts to simmer. That's about right for a green tea. When it comes up and it's like just starting to boil, that is when it's really good for like an oolong. And of course, you're going to want to definitely, when it's boiling, that's good for your black teas and your herbals and different things like that. Now this one's all set. I'm going to pour that in there. Then I'm going to shut this off as I move it away as well. So I wanted to start off with our first question, and the first question we had is, what is the difference? I forgot to set my timer. See? 2 minutes on the clock. There you go. It's always the hardest thing. All right, 2 minutes on the clock. So oolong versus black tea. So oolong and black tea, remember, they come from the same plant that has white tea and green tea. It all comes from the very same tea plant, that Camellia sinensis. It's just how it's processed that gives us a white tea or green tea or even a black tea or an oolong tea. Now, that's why it's always something that I want to emphasize. It's the same tea plant. It's just how the leaves are processed. So oolong tea leaves are partially oxidized, which means somewhere between 10 and 70% oxidized on average for oolong teas. And that means it has been allowed to come into the oxygen and different things like that. Oxidation, oxygen. Whereas a black tea has been completely oxidized. And it's actually usually broken down into smaller pieces. Now, a couple of other differences between black tea and an oolong tea. Because the oolong tea isn't as processed, it is only partially oxidized, it is going to have more of a balance between that green tea kind of flavor and kind of some herbal notes in there, as well as the bold, robust flavor of a black tea. It's going to kind of be halfway in between. It is highly prized. Oolong teas tend to be a little bit more expensive than either black teas or green teas for the most part. Most expensive teas are white teas, and we will talk about that a little bit later. All right, and I'm taking my basket out. And you know, I just usually put it in a custard dish because typically my big helper over there usually goes, and if I don't finish my tea, he'll go over there and he'll steal it. Almost spilled the tea in a bad way. And he'll drink that, and then he'll make another cup for himself. So I always want to put that aside. There's no wasting of tea here. We don't want to do that. All right. So we've kind of answered our first question with the black and oolong tea. The other question that I thought was interesting was, can I reduce some of the caffeine in one of my black teas that I like to drink so that I could have it at night and not have that full caffeine? And this is really good for anybody who has issues with caffeine from any kind of function. Well, the answer, yes you can. So there's a couple other things that make a difference. However, the number infusion that you have. So remember when we talked about how much caffeine you have in your cup of tea really depends on a lot of factors, and we went, and I had to go to the Mayo Clinic to even just get kind of standardized numbers that I felt like we could trust. But on average, the first time brew for a cup of tea, and when this average was done, they took into consideration oolong, green, and black teas. So they kind of took all three. They brewed them for the appropriate amount of time and the appropriate temperature, water, everything like that. When you averaged it out, the average 6 to 8 ounce cup of tea has about 69 milligrams of caffeine. But on a second brew, that average goes down to 23 milligrams. And then on the third brew, it has 8 as an average. So it really drops substantially And I was really interested in the actual numbers. I had to write them down because I wasn't going to be able to remember all those numbers. Now, another way other studies have looked at it is there's 70 to 90, on average 80% less caffeine in your second brew of a black tea. So that is one of the reasons why when we were talking about how you could kind of naturally decaffeinate your own tea or significantly reduce the amount of caffeine in it is brew it for a black tea for 1 minute. Put that aside. You can warm that up, or you have that first thing in the morning and then you save your second and third brew for later on that afternoon or that evening. And then once you have that first brew, you can go to your second brew or your third brew, or you can brew it for 1 minute, hand that tea over to someone like me who could drink it, or put aside for the next morning, or whatever you wish to do, and then brew it from scratch with the 3-minute brew for yourself, and you would already significantly reduce the amount of caffeine in that same tea, that highly caffeinated tea. So you can still enjoy the flavor of it without having all the caffeine. Now, one of the things that I did find was really interesting was that the water temperature actually makes a difference. So, little do you know, I always want to make sure, is there any angle that I haven't thought of and different things like that. So when I was doing some extra research for this to make sure I had the stats and everything, one of the things I came across was that the lower the temperature tea, or let me say that a different way, the higher the temperature the tea is brewed in, the more caffeine is extracted from the tea leaf and into your cup of tea. David is really excited about that. I just want you all to hear him in the background. Super excited about that. Fine. So the other thing is, you could do the colder temperature perhaps, instead of making it 212, make it 208. That might make a couple of milligrams difference. So that is one of those things that I wanted to share with you. Okay. So I'm going to take a sip. Starlight pear. Such a light one. Now I do want to take a second here and I want to talk about something that we are super, super excited about. And it's in this jar right here. And I know that you might have seen a couple of pictures of this on the Facebook page. But I don't really have a handy dandy assistant right now. He's over there growling with the little one. Got dinosaurs and monsters and all sorts of dragons in the other room. All right. So every 4 years on leap year day, we have a tea blend. There you go. I love the growly noises. Sorry if you can't hear them. Okay, and it is a real top-notch. Oh my gosh, it smells so amazing. It's got a little bit of floral, but it's mostly a fruity note, almost like a peach, with a little bit of green tea to balance it off. And what it is actually is our specialty tea. So this is your sneak preview, everybody, for today. Sneak preview. This Thursday, on Leap Year Day, this tea will be available. This tea will also only be available for 4 days. It will come out on Thursday, February 29th for Leap Year. It will then be available through Sunday. So 29, 30, 31, 29, 1, 2, 3. I believe March 3rd. It's been a long Sunday. March 3rd. And that'll be the last day that you can get this tea. This is the last day you can order that tea for 4 years. It is a leap year tea only. So it is made with some white tea and some extraordinarily high quality white tea, which is very expensive. White tea is processed the absolute least. It is one of those things that there's absolutely zero oxidation to it. It has the most minimal processing. Green tea is just barely processed a little bit more than that. It still has no oxidation, but White tea is super healthy for you, highest levels of antioxidants of any of the teas, anything that has the tea leaf in it. So this blend, which is called Double Spring Leap, will only be available for those 4 days. Now, I've been kind of teasing this for a couple of days. Let me tell you, we had a hard time deciding. So this is 1 leaf of the white. One leaf of the top. And if you'll excuse me for a second, yeah, let me get another one so you can see. These are huge. Now, so this is what normally one of our green leaves look like. And you can see the difference, especially if I get everything just right. It's so hard when I do everything backwards. But there's a green tea, and you see how huge those get. This gets even bigger. Very minimally processed. Like I said, it has a couple other things in it. It has some bloom corn flour, and it has a green tea blend. There's 4 ingredients in this one. It smells so fresh and light. Fruity note comes off first, like I said, but this is one of the things I want to really say is like spring, when the ground is really well watered and everything is really green and lush and you're in the first blossom of spring. That is exactly what this blend reminds me of. So yummy. So this will be available for 4 days. It will come in a tin. We are using separate little tins. This is what it will come in, and then inside this tin it will actually also come in a bag, because this tin is a pretty decent tin, but it is not double lidded. But this will have an ounce in it, and that will be available then. So if you are going to want it, I would say order it quick. We have a very limited order because the white tea that we're using is such a high quality. It is extremely rare. It is a silver needle white tea, and that is just, oh my goodness. I was working on a custom tea, and they had peach, and the first time I opened the pack of the silver needle white tea to make this batch, I smelled it and I was like, this would go perfect with peach. But we didn't go in that direction because we were doing a finalization on a flavor. So, and that's what I'm really liking, is I'm liking right now, especially in the evenings, that green tea where it's not as caffeinated. It's just a nice light flavor. Like for right now, I have Starlight Pear, and so it's just a really nice light peach and apple blend with the green teas. So that is what we've got brewing, literally. Next week I am going to, of course, use and have a cup of our Double Spring Leap tea when we join each other. Now, one of the other questions that I got is a little bit about food and tea pairings. And I have to say, there's a couple of rules of thought. There's some more traditional rules of thought when it comes to teas, and then and food pairings, and then there's some that just don't follow the rules, but they seem to work almost better. And those are the ones I really love to create and do. So when you have pairings, I typically break it out into just a couple of them. I typically break it out to your black teas, your green teas, your kind of fruity teas. I would have a section for chai teas, and then the other one that I would include in there would be more your herbals. Now, sometimes in the fruity, I might include like an Earl's blend, because that bergamot, that really brings kind of a fruity citrus element to it. Some people use that as their own category, and I can't deny it. It is really good and balances well with so many, an Earl's blend or an Earl's Lady blend, which is a lavender Earl Grey and an Earl Grey for us. These are ones that just really can balance and counterbalance well so many of the flavors in the tea. So that is one of the things that I always want to think about. And you know, there's two ways of going about it when you do food and tea pairing. Do you start with the food or do you start with the tea? Now, the interesting part is I've done it both ways. So when I talked about Thanksgiving, I did a real series on Thanksgiving and what teas to go with your Thanksgiving dinner. So we talked about turkey and we talked about ham and we talked about 3 or 4 different Thanksgiving meals that are pretty traditional for what people eat. And I had what the meat was, so I knew kind of what the flavor was. So I started with that and then I figured out which teas would go, and I gave a couple of examples. Then when I did my cookies, my Christmas cookies and holiday tea pairings, I went the other way. I thought about which holiday cookie would best bring out the flavor of that tea. And so I started with the tea, and then I thought about the flavors that would complement or contrast in a nice balanced way. You can do it either way. That is completely fine. That is completely up to you. It's your tea. Have it your way. So some traditional ways that I will talk about is a lot of times you're talking more red meat and venison and bison and super heavy pasta dishes like lasagna and things like that. Those are traditionally paired with some black teas, your breakfast teas or your orange pekoe type teas, different things like that. They're heartier, they're richer, they're more robust. They can stand up to the heavier proteins, so to speak, and the heavier, more rich food. Now, on the other side of that, if we're talking about green teas are always amazing with seafood, salads, lighter chicken dishes, not the heavy dishes for chicken. Green curries and green tea, very good together. Vegetarian, and this is also traditionally where I would put most vegan dishes, but there are a lot of vegan dishes that give the texture and richness of a meat, in which case I would go with a black tea. Now, oftentimes you have desserts and different things like that, and a lot of times what I would suggest for those are often white teas. Also super white light fish, like a cod, like a really fresh cod, a sea bass. I don't eat sea bass. There is one place that I eat the fresh Atlantic cod. It's in Newfoundland, so I don't have it very often. But those are so light and so delicate in flavor. That's where you're going to want to balance with that white tea, because white tea is the most delicate of teas. All right, so where am I putting, what if I've got a really complex dessert, or I'm having cake or dark chocolate of some kind? I know there's a lot of chocolate lovers out there. I have a couple of friends that don't care for it, or I know some people that are allergic to chocolate, but for the most part, those dark chocolate or that super rich, complex dessert, this is where I'm going to suggest you bring out some of those fruity or citrusy teas to balance. It's not as heavy. The citrus and the fruit is going to bring a lighter note, and it's going to bring out more of the flavors. So if you had like a Black Forest cake with that kind of cherry flavor in there and everything, and then you pair that with a tea that has a strawberry or a red berry or even a cherry in it, it is going to bring out the flavor in that chocolate cake so much more than if you just had a standard, breakfast tea. So that's where I like to put the fruity ones. And this is why I will often put the Earl's Blend or the the Earl's Lady blend in, because they can match with such complex flavors and bring something else to the table that really stuns you. This is where I love to put the savory stuff. I love to have the, like the Lady Grey, where you've got, your bergamot and your traditional blend of black teas and your lavender, and add that into having like your lemon rosemary scones. You've got savory, you've got sweet, you've got a little bit of citrus. I love how they contrast each other, but they still come for a really amazing blend. Those are my favorite things to kind of do, is those complex flavors. I love when things complement and bring out each other. I love when they contrast and bring things out, as long as they stay really well balanced. And that's kind of how we are with our teas too. We really love a well balanced tea. But all right, I am not seeing any other questions tonight. Again, I thank you all for coming. Next week we are going to be enjoying some of our Double Spring our Double Spring Leap tea. We are going to be talking about a little bit more about food pairing, in that tiered trays and tea. We're coming into the Easter/Mother's Day season. A lot of people are having teas, like our churches, and I want people to be able to know, like, what are the 3 tiers, and why do we have the tiers, and what does it matter, and which tea should I serve? Are you trying to serve 1 tea or 3 teas? And so many questions have come up about that I'm actually going to take all those questions that you gave me, and we're going to talk about that next Sunday. So I'm going to go play with the small, tiny, handy-dandy assistant, and I will see you all next week. Thanks for joining us.